Hello everyone, and welcome to a short warm-up on distance and displacement. So here's a little problem. I actually got this from Tom Henderson, the concept builder guy, and it's a little question about a football coach going back and forth. And basically, there's two questions we want to answer. What was his distance walked, and what was his total displacement? Distance and displacement. So I want you to read the question and take a couple of minutes here and see if you can come up with an answer. Maybe check with your neighbor if you have a neighbor. And then I'm going to go over it with you. So maybe put this on pause for a couple of minutes and try to find an answer. All right, welcome back. So, distance and displacement. So let's start out with the first thing. Let's find his distance walked. And I'm going to have my little coach guy down here, and he's actually going to walk what it talks about in the picture. So notice he starts at the 10-yard line, which is A, and then he walks to the 40-yard line. So there he goes to the 40-yard line, which they're calling B. So how much distance was that? Started at 10 meters, ended up at 40 meters. So yes, that would be a distance of 30 meters, or 30 yards, sorry. It's in yards, not meters. And then he turns around and walks to the 0-yard line. Turns around, walks back to 0. So how much distance is that? Well, he started at 40 yards and now he's at 0 yards, so that is another 40 yards. Then he turns around again and walks back to the 50-yard line. Now he's at D, so we started here at 0. Now he's at 50 yards, which means he walked 50 yards. And then he turns around and walks back to the 25-yard line, completing his 10 minutes of pacing. Turns around, walks back to the 25. Okay, so he started at 50, ended up at 25 for another 25 yards. Add those all up, and you get a total distance of 145 yards, which is answer O, 145 yards. Right. Hopefully, that's what you got. Notice that this distance is just how far he walked, has nothing to do with direction. So all these answers that have east or west, right, those are not going to be distances. Right? Only the ones that are just how far he went, right, will be distances. So that's probably the easier one, right? Certainly the one you could have answered before taking this class. But now we need to find his displacement. Well, let's remember that displacement means change in position. And to find the change in a quantity, you have to take where you end up, right? And he ends up at point E, which is the 25-yard line. Right? So here he is at the 25-yard line, point E. Right? So that's 25 yards. Minus his initial position. In this case, he started at A. So notice I'm using X sub E for the final and X sub A for the initial. Right? And he ended up at 10 meters, or sorry, he started at 10 yards. Right, which is position A. And the displacement is just the change in that quantity. So 25 yards minus 10 yards is simply 15 yards. But we have to be a little careful here. Right? It's 15 yards, but it's a positive 15 yards. Right? And displacement is a vector quantity. So traditionally, positive means to the right. And if you look in the picture here, conventional kind of cardinal directions, to the right is to the east. Right? So positive means right, which is to the east. So the answer would be 15 yards east, which is answer A. Notice a displacement is a how far you went and a direction. Right? It's got that direction aspect in it, while there's distance, a scalar, is just how far you walked. But notice that these numbers are very different from one another. Right? The distance was 145 yards. The displacement was only 15 yards east. So hopefully you notice here that distance is just how far he walked. That's what we like to call in physics path dependent. Path dependent, it depends on how you got there. Right? So how far he walked in going from A to E depended on what he did. He went out here, then he came back here, then he went out there, then he came back here. Right? So it depended on his path. Whereas his displacement, Didn't really care how he got from A to E, only that he started at A and ended at E. Right? He could have gone straight there, right? And he would have walked 15 yards east. Right? He could have started there, gone to the left, then gone to the right, then gone to the left, then gone to the right, and ended up there. And he still would have ended up only changing his position 15 yards to the east. That's what's known as path independence. Right? So distance is path dependent, displacement is path independent. So I hope you see that there can be a difference between the two, although, as in this case, it usually takes a change in direction along the way. Right? So he was going east and then west and then east and then west, and that's what changed the number a lot. Path-dependent distance, path-independent displacement. So I hope those were the answers you got on this short warm-up on distance and displacement.